Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland Brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland Brothers. Come on, me in and join in the fun. Travel all over Australia.
This week we have 3 more unique stories for you. Where do we start, Mal?
Well, our first story comes from South Australia, from a town here by the name of Lyndhurst. There we meet an unusual man who makes sculpture using talc rock. And then we travel over to Western Australia, to a lake over here by the name of Lake LeFroy. The lake itself is not the subject of our film though. It's a very interesting action-packed sport, land yachting. And then where do we go to, Mike?
Across to New Zealand to look at 2 train stories. The first one is the Silver Fern Express around the Raurimu Spiral in the North Island. Then we go to the South Island to Kingston to look at the famous Kingston steam train.
Well, we're all fairly familiar with talcum powder. You ever wonder where it comes from? Well, it comes out of the ground, and it comes out of the ground in the form of a rock. And this is what the rock looks like. It's known as talc. And this is crushed up into a very fine powder to produce the baby powder that we're all fairly familiar with. Although you can't see it on television, if you rub your hand on it, it's very smooth, and it feels like it's covered in a very fine powder. Well, this is mined near the town of Lyndhurst in South Australia. And we've come here to have a look at an artist, a local artist by the name of Alf Ferrink, who turns these blocks of talc, which is fairly soft rock, into beautiful works of art, into sculpture by carving it. And we've come here because of a request from Karen Smith in Ivanhoe, who asked us to take a look at talc.
Living in a somewhat crude dwelling of corrugated iron, which he put together himself, Alf, as he likes to be known, works on his sculptures whenever he feels in the mood. He reckons he turns out 4 or 5 pieces a week, and from this he can earn enough to provide all the needs for his wife and daughter. He doesn't make any big effort to sell his sculpture, and although he's certainly off the main road, enough people call in to buy everything he can produce. Alf doesn't do it to make money. His modest existence in this rather isolated part of the country bear testimony to that. Alf enjoys creating his carvings, but he's only too willing to chat to any friendly passer-by.
Alf, how long have you been doing this now, altogether?
Well, I started working in talc when I was about 17.
How long does it take to complete it from a rough bit of rock through to a finish?
It would take about 1 day to finish.
A full day?
Yeah, a full day.
These abstract ones, do you just sort of let it take the shape of the rock pretty well, or do you have a plan before you start, or what?
No, well, as you work, the mind makes the matter, more or less.
Now, what sort of tools do you use for this? I know you've got the rasp there for sort of roughing it up, but how do you get round to that smooth finish?
Well, you start off with rough sandpaper and then finish it off with steel wool or even just a handful of sand.
Oh, yeah? How does that work? Just like an abrasive?
It's an abrasive. Well, the sandpaper's the same thing, more or less. But you can use only sand.
Alf's house is built right next to the Alice Springs railway line, and he works sort of unofficially, loading the talc rock onto the railway truck as it comes in from the mine in the northern part of the Flinders Ranges. As consideration, the mining company allow him to pick out his requirements for carving. This unique rock is very soft, and the best of it produces the finest talcum powder in the world. Talc carving is carried out in Greenland by the Eskimos, according to Alf, and also in Africa. Alf gained his first experiences with talc in Queensland, at Cairns, but the rock there was of a less pure type, so he moved into the almost desert regions of South Australia to be near the best talc. Alf's subjects are a reflection of his immediate surroundings. He just loves nature and the wilderness. His sculptures always contain things which he regards as natural: the earth, the sun, animals, and man. It's not surprising that camels feature in many of his works, because Alf is proud to be a camel owner and frequently sets off on his camel to spend time wandering about the desolate country, observing and thinking. Alf believes the camel is one of the best means of travel in the world and needs no encouragement to knock off calving to mount up and spend a few days on walkabout, observing the world from his elevated perch on the camel. Whether or not his work will be judged to be good sculpture or not is of no concern to Alf. He says that since he came to this remote spot, and he has been able to work when it suits him, he's found contentment and satisfaction. And here, he's able to take his pick of the best talc rock in the world. A request from Alex Smythe of Gulgong in New South Wales to see land yachts in action brings us to a land yachting club on the shores of a vast salt lake in Western Australia.
Well, we've arrived at the Lake LeFroy Land Sailing Club on a nice windy day, and Lake LeFroy is just near the nickel mining town of Kambalda, and we're going to talk now with Phil Silverlock. He's a club champion. Phil, can you tell us a few things about land yachting? I mean, did it develop in Australia?
Oh no, it developed in Europe. In I think Holland was the first place to officially have them.
And how long ago was it?
16th century.
Oh goodness, that far back.
Yes, it's a fair while ago, but they've had them in America in the old Wild West days, and in China, and the European is the scene now, the European Championships.
And when did it first start up here? Because you've got an ideal sort of location for it.
1970 they started here.
And now these yachts, are they much different to the ones you had when the club first started? Are they gone further?
We have improved a lot. We've probably got 20% faster, but 50% dearer, the yachts would be.
What sort of performance do you get out of them?
Oh, you can, on a good day, about 125 kilometres an hour.
Gee, that's fast. Is it safe at that speed? I mean, what happens if something goes wrong?
Well, you're safe at that in your car. It's pretty safe, yeah. You couldn't complain. If you fall out, well, most people get salt rash bad.
I noticed that most of the chaps wearing crash helmets. Is that a club regulation that you've imposed?
Compulsory, yeah. And good clothes and seatbelt, very important.
Here on any Sunday, the activities at the club are just like those which take place at sailing clubs all over Australia. The difference, of course, is that the hulls have wheels and are capable of much higher speeds. These craft are mostly home-built, and each one reflects the preferences of the individual who built it. At between $500 and $600 each for parts, and about 2 weeks of nights and weekends for labour, land yachting is a relatively cheap sport. A shop talk in the rigging area is usually concerned with who is trying what to improve the performance of his yacht. For unlike conventional sailing, there is still a lot to learn about land yacht technology. Some are single-seater units built for speed, others more sedate two-seaters for husband and wife teams. But whatever the style, they all go like the wind on the vast openness of Lake LeFroy. are 3 classes of yachts, and the club usually organises a triangular circuit for races. Working with a handicap system, it's possible for all 3 classes to compete with each other. There are thousands of square kilometres on Lake LeFroy, and from time to time keen club members organise long-distance expeditions to the extremities of the Salt Lake, providing an added dimension to land yachting. The yachts are relatively simple to build, and the club offers plans for sale to any interested person anywhere in Australia. Skimming across the ground only a few centimetres from the salt at around 100 kilometres per hour is a thrilling sensation, and it's easy to see how this is becoming a fast-growing sport wherever there is a piece of flat open ground.
We have a letter from Robin Rawlinson of Burradar, New South Wales. She says, could the Leyland Brothers show us the crookedest railway? Well, Robin, we had to go to the North Island of New Zealand to find what we think is the most crooked railway line. It's called the Raurimu Spiral, and it's here in the middle of the North Island. The Silver Fern railway line from Auckland to Wellington had to climb the Raurimu range just here, and they corkscrewed the railway line up the range, and it's an engineering feat of world renown. To see the remarkable engineering feat of the Raurimu Spiral, we take a journey on the Silver Fern train that travels from Auckland to Wellington. The spiral is about halfway along the route through the North Island of New Zealand.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now approaching Raurimu. Raurimu is the foot of our famous Raurimu Spiral.
Faced with towering mountains to climb near the high plateau in the North Island, the builders of the main trunk railway had to come up with a method of climbing 215 metres in 6 kilometres, a gradient that would normally be too great for the trains to climb. They overcame this with a remarkable engineering feat that is acclaimed throughout the world. By using a series of horseshoe bends, a complete circle and a series of tunnels, they corkscrewed up the hill, extending the distance to 11 kilometres and cutting the gradient down to 1 in 50, the maximum permissible. The Raurimu Spiral is unique. It is the only one of its kind throughout the world.
There are many different stories about the spiral, but one has it that a bushman showed the engineers the way up the hill, who knew the country like the back of his hand, and he showed them the way up. It took them a wee while to get up because they had to mark it as they went, you know. I think this bushman, I think he got credit as 10 shillings for showing the engineers the way up the hill. That's the way the story goes anyhow. The spiral itself is a right-hand curve uphill with 2 tunnels in it. So you actually go over yourself.
Railway engineer R.W. Holmes came up with a masterly design for the spiral and saved the railways from a costly alternative route. A really fantastic engineering masterpiece on the North Island of New Zealand. We've had many letters from our viewers asking to see steam trains, and we'd like to thank them all for writing in. We found what we think is a very interesting steam train in New Zealand on the South Island. Down here, at the bottom end of the South Island, there's a steam train that runs from Lumsden up to Kingston, and it's called the Kingston Flyer. It's a beautiful old steam train, and we hope you'll like it. Our story of the Kingston Flyer starts at Lumsden, the southern end of the famous steam trains route. Here the engine driver and fireman, using a steam-driven crane, load coal for the run to Kingston and back. The engine carries enough coal for the return run. There are no coal loading facilities at Kingston. We board the train at Lumsden Station. The Kingston Flyer is an AB class locomotive built in 1925 at Addington in New Zealand. These locomotives are remarkably powerful for their size and can haul loads of 700 tonnes on easy grades. Lumsden Station Master rings the traditional brass bell at departure time. The Kingston Flyer works from Lumsden to Kingston and back, a round journey of 120 kilometres. The service is twice daily, commencing just before Christmas each year and finishing on Easter Monday. The Flyer's drivers and firemen love the locomotive and say this job is a pleasant change from driving the diesel locos. The line to Kingston on Lake Wakatipu was completed in 1878 and served the people of this farming area for 92 years. With the changing pattern of transport and the upgrading of the highways, the line was to be closed down. Local residents protested, and the then General Manager of New Zealand Railways, Mr. Ivan Thomas, came up with a plan of restoring some old steam locomotives and running them on this line as a tourist train. This would keep the line open for diesel goods trains as well. The Minister for Railways liked the idea, and the restoration of 2 AB class locos and carriages was carried out at a cost of $70,000. Rebuilding of the carriages and fittings was carried out from old photographs and paintings, as most of the tradesmen had never seen the old equipment in use. The inaugural run of the restored Kingston Flyer was in December 1971 with a grand send-off of brass bands. The buffet car was a former ministerial touring carriage and is now fitted out with a bar. The interior has a definite 1920 look with gaslight fittings and varnished wood. Many travellers on the train are from Australia and other overseas countries who enjoy the romance of steam while they are seeing some of the countryside at a leisurely pace. Many a traveller is seen gazing out the window with a faraway look on his face, enjoying the nostalgic experience of the smell of the coal smoke and the clackety-clack as the carriages gently sway on the steel tracks. The country between Lumsden and Kingston is a constantly changing panorama, from willow-lined rivers to dry tussock country with farmland in between. Lumsden and Kingston on the edge of beautiful Lake LeFroy. Before the train can make the return run to Lumsden, it has to be filled with water, and the engineer always gives the loco a bit of a polish, so that it looks its best for the photographers amongst the passengers. Many enthusiastic passengers help with the turning of the train on the huge turntable. It swings around remarkably easy.
What's wrong with you? Rebellion.
The Kingston Flyer comes from the golden age of steam and is a popular link with the past, still doing the job it was designed for, and a little bit extra as well.
If you love steam trains, and judging by the number of letters we've had, there must be quite a lot of people that do. If you ever come to New Zealand, you must take a ride on the Kingston Flyer, because it takes you right back to the 30s.
Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland Brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, no matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland Brothers.